Used to be a guy.
Which was airline?
When it was very new, Kingfisher.
Okay.
Long time.
Okay, so we should be online any moment now. Let me quickly check if we are, and then we can start. Yeah. Okay. So we are online. Let's begin. Hello, and welcome to this special episode of the Shift with CJ podcast. Why is it special? Because today I have someone special in the biohacking studios. Yeah, you guys have been asking me this for a very long time. Everyone's always like, hey, can you tell us about our hair? Because, we might be losing it. It's too rough, it's too dry, it's too greasy. And these aren't really problems that I've heard from women. A vast majority of them have been women, but men classically, which don't care about their hair health at least, they have certain problems in life. They have problems that they might not be with a wonderful partner, or they might have a problem that they have an ever expanding belly, or they have a problem that they don't have enough money. But now there is another problem that they have a receding hairline. And today on the show, I've got an expert for you, Dr. Manisha. Welcome to the show.
Thank you, CJ. I'm very glad that we are doing this here because I clearly feel like the hair industry is such an underserved market, and there is a lot of inexact science when you talk about hair restoration. So yeah, I'm very glad that we're doing this, and thank you.
It's a pleasure to have you. And one of the reasons why I wanted to have you on this show was because I have had a lot of hair influencers on my Instagram, and everyone's just endorsing a product, and everyone's just talking about, oh wow, how does this thing, it gives me great results. But very few people in this world are now informing or educating people about the exact science, the biohacks, if you want to call it, or the tricks, or just like what is really working. And when I went through your profile, I saw that you are constantly delivering really good scientific information regarding hair health, and that is what everyone needs. We've had enough Instagram influencers and enough celebrities which have been mostly paid to endorse a product, but no one is really telling you what that product is doing and why it might work. So it's a pleasure for me to have you on today's podcast, and I'm excited because you know hair, as you know, is like everyone has got hair, and like the your normally we see our card like we see like arterial fibrillation, or like we see some kind of blood vessel clotting, or like our blood sugar going too high, or something else where you're restricted with movements and you're like, ah, I think I might be unhealthy. But when your hair keeps falling, or you're seeing this weird pattern of baldness going on, especially around 30s or like late 40s, no one seems to think that they might not be healthy. And every organ, everything in our body is sort of connected to our health. So if one thing goes wrong, like for many, for decades, people didn't even think like if something's gone wrong with their teeth or they have gum pain, that something is sort of like going wrong in their system or their biology. But now we are having more evidence that everything is sort of connected. And talking about like teeth, you were an ex-dentist, correct?
Yes, I used to be a dentist.
You used to be a dentist. Okay.
That was like eons ago.
Okay.
I quit dentistry almost 10 years now. But I did practice for 2 years, and every time I woke up and I went to a dental clinic, I really didn't feel very cold towards, if I may just add, although I had a very tangible impact in every clinic that I worked through. I just felt this was not my calling, and I was 23 years old. I think I wasn't thinking about the repercussions, but I just took a plunge and gave that career off to just understand who I really was, and just the question of why am I here was so strong that I did not really think about the consequences of leaving a career that I studied so hard for. Fast forward 10 years, I did not just do hair education as my full time, but I also have had an experience in the F&B, if I may add, in this country, and that kind of gave me navigation towards the so much that we as individuals have the potential to tap into and contribute at the same time. And During pandemic, while I was still with my corporate job, I kind of felt there was definitely a health issue that I was going through because I saw hair all over my house, and that for a woman is a very powerless feeling. And my mom, when I was a really small kid, she would kind of like do like a chomping. We
Mhm.
call it like a scalp oil
Yeah.
massage in India. She would do this very regularly for my sister and me, and because I was already a wellness certified nutritionist, I was already sharing a lot of information on Instagram thanks to this platform, which kind of brings us also together and helps us to share whatever it is that we have. And I realized that a lot of people are coming back to me with only this one issue, which is hair, which I was
Mhm.
also kind of facing myself. And my mom used to kind of create this oil out of her kitchen. And with my understanding a little bit about wellness, adaptogens, Ayurvedic herbs, I kind of upgraded that recipe and created a product which not just helped me, but it also helped people who started placing the order
Mhm.
on Instagram, and that kind of enabled me to tap into this underserved market, which I think only talks about how a product kind of like helps you stop a particular symptom, but with Ayurveda, which goes back thousands and thousands of
Mhm.
years ago, it taps into your root cause. And this product, which I've been selling for over 2 years now, has enabled people to not just stop the symptoms, but also understand that there is so much deep rooted that they were going through. Because the oil not just like stops the hair fall, but also calms your senses. And that kind of led me to go one step further and create my online course and give credibility for someone who's created a product, comes with some understanding of the hair follicular health, which is a very complex system. And just topically addressing that is not the only thing that you can do. And that enabled me to tap into the market and reach out to more and more people. And that's why I do what I do today.
And I'm so happy that you do what you do today. And congratulations, because like when you were mentioning about your story, the part that you studied so hard to become a dentist, you had a successful career, but then there was some part of you which wasn't satisfied.
Yeah.
And for everyone who's listening out there, normally people have this realization when they're like 28, 29, or 30, but Manisha had it quite early. So kudos to you.
Thank you. Although I didn't know what it is that I was going to do, but I really definitely knew that dentistry was just not cut out for me. I wasn't able to be in my element, which I am right now, today.
Yeah, today you're a biohacker because you biohacked your mom's old oil recipe and like sort of, and that's what we call biohacking. You have a biology that was thriving, and then suddenly something happens, and then you're in this state where you are stressed out and you don't know what to do, and then you
Correct.
sort of use all the information, all the channels, whether it is tapping into traditional Chinese medicine or traditional Ayurvedic medicine, or like looking at some nutrition and like seeing what matters, and then even taking anecdotal evidence from your parents and maybe great grandparents, and then like a lineage of traditions that have been passed down. So that is what we call biohacking, and everyone, if biohacking is about, the show is about biohacking, so welcome, we have another one in our community.
Yeah, funnily enough, I actually would before I focused all my energy into as a hair educator, I used to call myself a biohacker
Yeah, we're all
because
biohackers.
that's why I gauge the age. Like I do believe aging is a disease, and just because everybody ages, we think it's such a norm. But no, getting old is fine, but aging for me is a no-no, and hair fall is a very very important consequence of aging, which we all can biohack.
Which we all can biohack. So let's understand how to biohack it. But before we begin to jump into the solutions, I think one of the most important things that is required for biohacking is clearly understanding what we are dealing with. Because only when we completely understand the problem, we can
Correct.
sort of like
Exactly.
find loopholes and like get into the other side, get some things out, get some things in.
Yeah.
So let's talk about, why are people losing their hair? Like, why were you losing your hair? Why do people lose their hair? And this show is sort of like equally divided between men and women. So if there's
Right.
something something specific that stands out for men, I would like you to address it. If there's something very specific that stands out to women, then I would like you to address it as well.
Yeah. So before we like really dive into the biology of why we have hair fall, understanding what hair is. So we all know like hair, this is a dead fiber. It is the hair follicle which is alive.
Mhm.
Uh, and The reason why we have hair fall, it all boils down to understanding the phases in which hair grows. So that's very critical for everyone to know before we know the root cause.
So that's the anagen, telogen. Yeah,
Correct.
right. Okay.
Yes.
So I'll
Yeah.
let her explain this. Go for
Yeah.
it.
So it's categorized into three phases. There's a growing phase, there is a resting phase, and then there's a degenerative phase. Now this phase is for a total of 3 months, which is 90 days. Whenever there is any disruption in this phase, that's when you see hair fall. You see premature graying, you see itchiness in your scalp. There are multiple symptoms that you face before you actually see hair fall because our body is constantly communicating to us. So we all know, like in today's time, everybody is living in a life of fight, flight. They are constantly in a state of sympathetic activation, which is our
Yeah.
central nervous system's side, which we don't want to be active all the time. It's good when we are doing like a really good workout where we need that cortisol rush. But on the contrary, even when there's no potential threat outside of our body or in our environment,
Like when your boss is screaming at you,
oh, it could be
or a traffic jam.
it could be a dominating boss, it could be an overpowering partner, it could be just you not happy with your own self. There could be multiple reasons for your sympathetic activation, but what we don't I think most of us, because we are in the same circle, we think everyone knows, but no, parasympathetic state of activation is what our body understands the most, being in a state of rest, digest, calm, which enables our muscles to tone down, blood pressure to fall, just be in a like basically switch from survival
Mhm.
to thriving,
Mhm.
right? Just for our listeners to know that what do we need to live a very simple, basic, comfortable life, food, clothing, shelter. Right?
Mhm.
This is survival.
Yeah.
We cannot go in a thriving mode if these three things are not taken care of. Similarly, for our body, our digestion, our thyroid, our reproductive system, they all need to be in a survival mode so that the body can power through and put you in a thriving state.
Mhm.
And body does not care if you have great hair, great skin. You
Yeah.
can be bald or you can be
Yeah.
surviving, right? So good hair, good skin only comes when you are in a thriving mode.
So it's all about resource allocation. So what Manisha is
Exactly.
trying to say here, guys, is that if you're stressed out, like let's say you did not find parking or you're late for school, you're activating this state of your nervous system, which sort of rushes, gives you a lot of energy because it rushes these glucocorticoid hormones, or like let's say stress hormones called
Cortisol.
norepinephrine, cortisol, and all of these things are kind of get you into that hyperactive mode, and you get more things done, and but you're at the end of the day you're not relaxed. Your mind is always running, you're always thinking about things, and you're not just in a relaxed zen um, sort of like a mindset which you would have maybe by meditation, maybe by when you're watching a movie. And what happens is when you're in this phase, which we call it sympathetic nervous system, your all of your body's resources are
Reallocated to
yeah.
your extremities
Yeah.
because it wants you to run from a fear or fight a battle, and also because our scalp has a blood supply anti-gravity. So what our body does is it taps into this energy resource of the scalp and allows you to power through because it cares about your heart beating all the
Yeah.
time. It wants you to run away from this potential threat, but there is actually no threat
Yeah,
outside
most of
your.
you guys who are sort of like, including me, most of us are just like reacting on useless threats, which are not really threats. And you would be surprised that running from a tiger 10,000 years ago and sort of like, getting late for a meeting or screwing up your presentation is actually the same sort of stress. You just don't see a tiger anymore. And
Yeah. The body
we're,
doesn't know.
yeah, our
Body's
body
just
doesn't know.
gonna react the same way. And just for the sake of this podcast, I have categorized these triggers which we on a day-to-day basis experience and face. So categorically, there can be an external source and there can be an internal trigger, right? And we know that skin is the interface between the environment and our systemic function. We are constantly exposed to pollutants from the environment. We are constantly using styling products, especially men,
Yeah.
the wax and the gels. It is a chemical, so basically, it is categorized as an external toxin exposure. What happens is because our environment is constantly reacting with
Mhm.
whatever it is that you're applying on your skin or on your hair, oxygen is in play. Now, when these pollutants or styling products interact with oxygen, there's something called as reactive oxygen species, which is formed, and that penetrates through your skin. You know, skin is the largest organ, so
Mhm.
because it penetrates through the skin, there is a multitude of reactions that are happening and having a dominoes effect on not just your hair fall but your systemic
Mhm.
conditioning. This is the external factor.
Yeah.
Now, when this reactive oxygen species seeps through your skin, there's an internal reaction that's happening. What it does is it kind of pushes your growing phase of hair into the catagen phase, whereas it stops growing, and that's when you see there's a hair plateau. Your hair doesn't grow beyond a certain length, which I think I was experiencing.
Not
Uh,
anymore, I'm sure.
Not anymore because I've clearly hacked it. I know the
Yeah.
secrets. So that's what happens internally. Internally, not just there's an exposure, but as we spoke about stress, there is a systemic stress we all are experiencing. But hair follicle, it locally also produces its own cortisol.
Mhm. Oh, interesting.
Yes, a localized cortisol production whenever there's a reactive oxygen species or anything that you are thinking and is putting you in a state of nervousness. So there is localized and systemic reaction to stress. Now, stress, we all know, can stop your hair growth, can manifest in the form of excessive hair fall because it pushes your hair from catagen to telogen. Telogen is the phase when the hair starts falling. And that's why people always wonder when they're washing their hair or they're applying oil or when they're just sitting in a meeting room or wherever, they get up and they see like clumps of hair fall.
Mhm.
So this is your body communicating to you something.
That something is not right.
Yes. And because of the stress, now this is like just see the cascade of reactions
Mhm.
that are happening. Once there is stress, because your body is super intelligent, I think this is a biomachine that we should all be grateful for. Every single day we wake up. Now, because there is stress, our body innately will produce defense reactions, right? There will be inflammation because the body does not want you to kind of give into this stress. So there will be T cell activation. Your immunity will try to come and play. But because there will be a consistent exposure to stress, inflammation is bound to happen. Now, what happens when there is a stress and inflammation together? Hyaluronic acid and proteoglycans, they come down to 40%.
Okay.
And HLA, which we very popularly call it as, it reduces, when it reduces to 40%, and it kind of protects your hair follicles,
Okay.
so obviously you're going to get hair growth. So stress, inflammation together, it's a perfect recipe
For hair
for
disaster.
hair fall. And the third thing,
Yeah.
because we are hormonally regulated, putting one and one together, it's going to impact your hormonal, your endocrine system. Your testosterone is going to shoot up. Your thyroid is going to get imbalanced, and these are the two main hormones which are to look out for when you have any sort of a hair distress. And imagine somebody like consider when we were all exposed to COVID. Uh, there is not just stress, inflammation, but imagine somebody who already has a PCOS or a thyroid
Yeah.
imbalance. Now
Goes
this
out of that. Their system doesn't know what to do.
exactly. So now this is like an even perfect recipe for disaster for you to face hair fall or any hair issues for that
Interesting.
matter.
Okay, so I love how you beautifully categorize it into three parts, and let's jump into these three parts and explore them a little bit more further, so people sort of have like a clear idea of what we're talking about. I mean, honestly, I agree with everything that you've said, especially the part about. I also feel that physical, emotional, psychological, any sort of stress that can impact you in some way or the other can also reduce. Like there are some studies that show like intelligent activity increases by 70% by just by being in stress. And I like how you mentioned about like the past year in the pandemic, we were all most of the people were suffering for this crazy thing that we should not name, otherwise we would be kicked out of podcasting. There's so much of crazy things going on. So the flu that most of the people had or are still having, there are cases and recorded cases where in the hospitals where people were admitted and sort of got better. At least 22% of them are still after a year and a half facing hair loss and having some hair problems. So that just explains all of it, like
That's why
extreme
a lot
stress
of
to the body.
that's why a lot of people are facing telogen or telogen. I don't know how people pronounce it. I say telogen
Yeah.
effluvium, which happens when stress, inflammation combined with a hormonal imbalance results in more hair fall. And the beauty about hair is that it's a cyclical organ. So any damage that happens to the hair follicle, considering it's these three factors, it's reversible. Obviously, I am not a trichologist. I am not a practicing doctor for hair. But if it goes to a point where it's alopecia or where people are, then this podcast should not be their benchmark,
Mhm.
because then they definitely need a trichologist and they need some professional nutritional advice. So just a disclaimer.
Okay, so if you guys are at the extreme ends and you're getting to androgenic alopecia or some of those states, but I also think that even if people who are listening and they are at that extreme stage, incorporating whatever we are about to say,
Of course,
it
yes.
will make a huge difference
Yeah.
because the body is always recycling and the cells are always recycling, and whether it be local or systemic inflammation, the more you sort of get your body rid of inflammation, I think it is one of the biggest standing factors of anti-aging at this point.
Like
Like,
that is actually the number one thing that I tell
yeah,
my clients. It's the inflammation, which is the number one cause of your hair fall.
it should be just called inflammation. What do you think about it? It
Infl-
shouldn't be even called like inflammation. It should be called inflammaging.
Oh, well, that's an interesting term. But if you look at any genetic predisposition that people have to hair fall, it's also psychological, but it also is a fact that they kind of believe, like, if they have a genetic they are gonna
Mhm.
they're gonna have hair loss. But no, it's about as you say, biohacking. It's not just changing your biology outside, but you can transform the biology from within, so that you can be whatever it is that you want to be.
Mhm.
Like for me, I set an intention 2 years ago, like, yes, I'm gonna get rid of this hair plateau and I'm
Yeah.
gonna make sure my hair grows like never
Mhm.
before. And for now, I would say like my hair has never been in this state.
You have beautiful hair. For people who are listening and you can't see this podcast, let me tell you, Manisha has got beautiful, long, shiny hair.
Thank you, thank you. So I think it's also about subconscious reprogramming, and that's where biohacking is such an important tool to incorporate. But actually, I tell my clients, like, whenever you are applying the scalp oil or anything that you're doing with your hair, have positive affirmations.
Yeah,
Internalizing positive affirmations just goes to say how strong our mind is, and it can give you whatever it is that you want if you know how to manipulate
interesting.
your thinking process.
Also, it adds on to the other point that we spoke about before. When your body is into this fight or flight response, whether you're thinking about the bills to pay or the emails to send, and then let's say you're putting on a hair oil, your body is literally going to reject everything that you put on it.
Correct.
And only the time where you sort of like take a back step, take some deep breaths, have your exhales longer than your inhales, you shift yourself into this parasympathetic or relaxing phase where your body is sort of ready to accept all the nutrients, use all the resources, like put more blood towards your head, like absorb more
That's
from.
luxury, right?
Yes,
It's luxury.
and
Thriving is a luxury.
and it's just like it's so simple. It's just you just have to relax. All you have to do is just relax, and the body will take care of itself. That's why they call it rest, digest, repair, regenerate. For those of you who thought parasympathetic, I don't know why they keep complicated names,
Yeah, it's
but
just rest and digest, guys. It's just your nervous
yeah.
system is in a very relaxed frame of mind, and that is the frame of mind your body understands the most, and that's when all the healing happens on a cellular level.
And also, like she mentioned about these genes. Now, the last time I checked, there were about 250 genes that are associated with some sort of a common hair problem that a lot of people would get. But also remember that we've only discovered 20,000 genes. So if you take a percentage, that's not much.
Yes.
250 out of 20,000. Some people say it's 30,000. And another thing, while you're doing your affirmations or subconscious programming, one of the one of the things which is super important is, as we mentioned, that you relax into it,
Yeah.
because the moment you sort of think that, oh, you have this genetic variant, that you did a gene scan and you saw something which interferes with your hair growth, that is just your genetic profile. It's not you, because there is something called as epigenetics, which
Exactly.
means the way and the environment in which these genes are turned off or turned on.
It's just like a software.
Yeah, so you
The
could
genes
have,
are like a
yeah, so
software.
you can turn them on, you
Yeah.
can turn them off,
It
and
won't run unless and until you. I mean, it won't have any implications unless and until you run that program, which is something that you're born with. And I do agree that 20% is genetics, but 80% is epigenetics, and that's why we have things like diet, we have supplements, we have so many other
Mhm.
non-invasive procedures which are now
which
out
we're going to
there.
talk about it.
Yeah, out there for you to arrest this whole aging process, which
Mhm.
I call hair fall. One of them is hair fall for
Okay,
sure.
that's why her name on Instagram is KHDH. By the way, I love that name. It's
Thank
super
you
cool.
so much.
So let's go. Let's look into these three phases. The first one is external. So, what is external again? It's all these chemicals that we're using, correct?
Correct. And it's
Um,
the constant exposure to the environment. It's constantly interacting, right? And that's something we don't have a control over. I mean, we do live in a very unnatural environment. That's something given. Like right now, you and I are not breathing the most natural air, right?
we're
So
breathing in air that smells good, but it's not very
yeah,
natural.
but we all have come to a point where we have understood that, and I think our body is so intelligent that even that has kind of understood that yes, this is not the most natural surrounding that I'll be always exposed to, and that's why we hack our internal system.
Mhm.
External is just a part for us to know that maybe minimizing products which are not paraben free or which are not halide free, because there is a there is an implication over a period of time, because chronically when you use something, your body is registering it,
So
right?
phthalates and parabens, these are these toxins, correct?
Toxins
Which
which
are
are
mostly in the
in the
products.
skin and hair products.
Okay, so most of the, if you're a conscious consumer and you want to take away something from this podcast, then
And this is just surface level. I'm sorry, but
yeah,
this is just surface level because there's a lot of awareness now in terms of cruelty-free products. People who are actually like my products completely handcrafted. Something is having 100% natural ingredients. There's minimal to no toxin exposure, so that's for sure. Like that's why I kind of support homegrown brands,
yeah.
support small businesses which are made with a lot of love, but they are also chemical.
Are you saying affirmations when you're formulating these?
I can't mantras. I'm listening
Okay,
to Janvi Harrison when I'm brewing my oil.
amazing. And that also has a very big impact, guys. Sound frequency, it's unbelievable. We don't have enough. Now we're having a lot of science and data around it, but this is technology that's been used for thousands of years according to many ancient tribes, and it's always worked. We just need more data on it. But okay, so normally for as a man, I could speak for men more, that most of us would be using some sort of wax or gel,
Correct.
or recently I have been using this hair mask, which
Okay.
is it. So what happened? A short story. Rewind 1 year ago. It was my 30th birthday, and I was in quarantine for 14 days. So as soon as I got out, I wanted to do something crazy for like 2 weeks.
Oh,
So
that's
I
when you had blonde
colored,
hair?
yeah. So I colored my hair like ash white, ash blonde, and for a guy who's never spent much time like coloring his hair, I didn't really know how this process works. So I just asked a few friends, "Can you suggest me a place where I can go and get this color done?" And they were like, "Yeah, sure. Go to this place in Jumeirah and you can do it." And now I'm thinking that most of the people that I see with colored hair have good hair, so the coloring doesn't do anything. But they bleached my hair. They did three sorts of procedures to
Yes.
get that hair color. Fast forward 2 weeks later, I had to dye them black again because I couldn't keep them for more than 2 weeks. And for the next 7 to 8 months, I had the worst hair fall
Ever.
on this planet. my hair were super dry. They had literally no life in them. And I was talking to a few people, and most of the people were like, use more conditioner, use more of this hair mask, and use all of these things. So a person who sort of had damaged hair would probably go to some treatment or hair mask or something else. And then we have the other route, which some guys would go, would be to take some kind of an Ayurvedic, like a coconut oil or like an oil made from amla or something else,
Yeah.
and then massage them into their hair, or
Yes.
like a hair cream, like a coconut oil hair cream or like an almond oil hair cream. So
Sorry to,
which of
yeah.
these are correct? Like,
Sorry to bust your myth, but once your hair is bleached, uh, there's just no way back. Yes, hair is a cyclical organ, but when I say cyclical, it starts from the hair follicle. So I have been there, teaching myself. Like I colored my hair completely blonde, and at that point I did not even have enough resource of information because I was still working. But from my understanding of what I as a girl, because I think we girls are more attuned with how our hair kind of reacts. The only thing I could do is like chop them off.
that's literally what everyone told me, but I was like,
Yes,
no.
because as I said in the beginning of the podcast, it's a dead fiber.
Yeah.
It's the hair follicle that needs to be nourished on a regular basis, and as long as that hair follicle is alive, you can manipulate your hair growth. It only comes to a point when the hair follicle dies from within because of some sort of cell apoptosis, and that happens when there is a chronic exposure to inflammation and when there are not adequate steps taken towards that. That's when the cell death happens, and
Mhm.
that's when your hair follicle completely closes down.
Most of my hair follicles probably were closed down.
No, I don't think it was your hair follicle. It was your hair that was damaged.
Okay, yeah, my
Yeah,
hair, correct.
in most of the male and female balding pattern that I come across in my day to day, because I have so many DMs
Yeah.
considering the hair fall. I think in itself is such a pandemic. Uh, in that case, also there is something called as hair follicle miniaturization that happens when the testosterone shoots up,
Mhm.
and what happens when testosterone is way above a normal range, it converts into DHT. Now, DHT is dihydrotestosterone. Now, this kind of mimics the androgenic receptors in our
Mhm.
hair follicles. They both fight for the same kind of nutrition.
Mhm.
So it happens that DHT takes over,
Yes.
and this is the most contributing factor in males and females as well, because just for the stats, 40% of women, as they hit menopause, they experience
Mhm.
hair loss. And 40% is huge if you look at like half the women.
Yeah.
It's like
Yeah.
a staggering number to think about. Like, why? Only if we could like hack our biology by taking the right supplements
Mhm.
and by living a low inflammatory lifestyle
Mhm.
and getting the right supplements, because our soil is deficient in all the nutrients that we need on a day-to-day basis,
True.
right? So DHT is, I wouldn't say the number one reason. It's
Yeah.
a contributing factor, yes, but just knowing the know-hows
Yeah.
helps you take a better decision and a step towards your hair fall.
DHT is super interesting because there have been multi-billion dollar industries now which claim to basically sort of block this
DHT,
DHT
which is not the
enzymes.
best thing to do.
Yeah, I also would argue strongly that inhibition of DHT would get you some results, but only focusing on DHT inhibition, which is like you mentioned, is an androgen. We have testosterone in our body, and then there are many androgens, and DHT is one, and it's sort of like all of these so-called drugs like finasteride or
And that's right.
finasteride and minoxidil.
Minoxidil.
Minoxidil. So most of them, how they sort of work is like they act on this 5 alpha reductase, which is
Correct.
5 AR. So there are 5 alpha reductive type 2 enzyme inhibitors, and they sort of like block the DHT. But when you sort of like look at a holistic picture, of course, there are so many scientists which will say, okay, this is the only thing to do and this is the
Yeah.
only way to go. But then you look at DHT, and DHT is responsible for all the hair follicles on your body. It's not just in your scalp, right? It's like it gives you some
Beard,
it's
your
beard,
your
chest
body
hair, body
yes.
hair, and we see that a lot of people who are getting bald, not all the time, their body hair is also like they're losing body hair, men and women together. And I have seen multiple studies where personally I don't advise people to use DHT inhibitors because what DHT inhibitors do, just because of blocking this 5-AR mechanism pathway, they also, people have a lot of insomnia, they have sexual problems, they have hormone dysregulations, there are
Yes.
so many suicidal attempts after medicines like these, they have some cognitive issues. So I prefer not to tell people about this.
At
Um,
least systemically,
yeah,
yes, it has all these implications.
and
But
also it builds up in, like, DHT is normally built up only in the localized area where you're sort of like, let's say if in your scalp, if you were experiencing like higher levels of testosterone, but DHT doesn't go up in the bloodstream. So it's not something that we're
yeah,
looking can go systemically. It's just mostly on the localized
mostly
area.
localized, and we do not want to block all of it.
Yes,
And
exactly.
that's why I have looked into a lot of products that are looking at incorporating finasteride topically, because then it's just gonna be like a localized
Interesting. Yeah, that would be good.
action. Yeah, even like for minoxidil works on a slightly different principle, because minoxidil is mostly for women. It's like a. Have you ever like had a chance to use minoxidil?
I have not minoxidil. No.
Yeah, it's a very
Finasteride.
it's a very like greasy, sticky, and has a very weird smell. Can cause irritation. So
Yeah,
about minoxidil, it's very funny how it even like came into existence. It was actually a blood pressure pill, minoxidil.
interesting.
And when people were consuming that, they realized they got hair on their knuckles. So it's like one man's side effect
Is
was
this
one
the
man's indication.
is this the same thing as like in the US they have Rogaine? Is that
And
minoxidil?
that's how Rogaine was born.
Okay, got it. Yeah,
That's how
interesting.
that's the history of
Interesting.
minoxidil. That's why I say one man's side effect turned out to be one man's indication,
Yeah.
and that's how funnily like that's why I say this the science for hair growth for hair loss is so inexact.
Mhm.
By the way, just for the stats, it's an $88 billion industry.
88 billion. Wow.
Yeah, and the hair restoration for men itself is like $1.2 billion. And as you
Like
was,
I said, many people are
yeah,
now scared, scared about their hair health.
and when I say hair restoration, I only talk about hair transplants, which is the step where people go for when they have tried literally everything
Mhm.
and nothing's worked. So basically, the hair follicle is dead. So in hair transplant, you get the hair follicles from the occipital bone,
Mhm.
from the
Yeah,
backside, and they just like kind of relocate,
yeah.
rechannelize these hair follicles in the front so that,
It looks so ugly in the beginning. Like people are, these are the people who
and
will
it's
have
very
less hair
painful.
and they will be wearing caps. Like, if your friend is suddenly wearing caps and he's gone to like some of these places like India, Turkey, and he's had less hair, and
Yeah.
suddenly you find a lot of like, these had interesting hair growth for sure.
But again, it's a only a hair
Yeah.
restoration procedure. If you do not maintain a healthy lifestyle thereafter, even that will not work. So that's why my approach is so holistic. I always encourage more and more people to have a regular scalp oil massage, because vascularity is by far the number one reason why we have hair fall issues, because blood carries all the nutrients, it carries the oxygen, it carries all the vital things that your hair needs for its survival in
Yeah.
the first place. So just vascularity, if maintained right from the beginning,
Yeah.
it shouldn't be like a reaction, it should be a preventative measure to your lifestyle.
And most of the people who are sort of getting these, experiencing these problems, you also see that they don't engage in a lot of exercise. They're mostly
Exactly.
sitting in front of a
Stagnant.
desk, and that reduces their blood flow and all of those things. But so, what do we use to style our hair? Let's get down to the nitty gritty. So now I'm a guy. I don't want to use my after listening to this podcast. I don't want to listen. I don't want to have gel or wax, because now we know that it could have, it's not very healthy for me, and I don't want to
Correct.
pay so much for being bald.
But
So
you have really good. I think you've done something
yeah,
really good. You're a
I mean,
biohacker, right? So yeah, I think you've hacked it
I
very
go through
well.
the basic principles every day.
Yeah.
So let's say, like, what would you advise like a woman or a man to use on a regular basis? Something that would like sort of give them a little bit of style, but doesn't
Yeah.
come up with all of those either like endocrine disrupting chemicals like phthalates, toxins, and other stuff.
It's a very simple strategy. Just turn around and read your labels and just see in what concentration are they using these chemicals, because they always put the chemical which is in the highest concentration in the first few ingredient list.
Okay.
That is one, like be aware, like be mindful in terms of picking your brands. The second would obviously be like make sure you're doing some little bit of a research when you're picking up, say, like a bond repair product.
Yeah.
Uh, there are multiple studies which kind of prove that silicons are not bad for you.
Mhm.
Okay, a lot of girls, I don't know about boys, but a lot of girls that come to me for consultation, they think that anything that has silicone is actually bad for your hair. But no, silicons are used in a particular dosage. They are obviously formulated out of a lab, and when you use it mindfully, when you know, and if it's a patented formula, like I'm not trying to talk about any
No,
brand
no.
here, and I'm not even like endorsing them, but I honestly, like from personal experience, it may sound like a very personalized experience, but I have done a little bit of a research on all the chemicals that I even like before I even tell people, I've done a little bit of research. So dimethicone is not bad, but yes, it creates like a buildup for which you can use a clarifying shampoo and get it off. But
Okay.
your bonds in the hair, which are disulfide bonds, they are constantly breaking down. So to make sure that they're rebuilt, uh, you can use silicones, but again, using and reading your labels mindfully is something that you should incorporate in your daily life. And if not, you can always reach out to a hair expert.
Yeah, you can always type in PhD age on Instagram and you can get a hold of Manisha.
Yeah,
Okay,
but
so
I think
we
awareness is the key.
okay, so as long as people know that there are some sort of like doing some kind of a research or they're looking for these small indicators like okay, paraben free, phthalate free, chemical free,
Yeah.
natural, or like 90% natural or 95% natural, that's much better than investing in a cheaper product which will really result in long-term damage. And also, it's not rocket science because most of the times these chemicals they thicken your hair so much, and then there is not enough. Sometimes I use these wax and I can't even like move my hand or my finger to.
Yeah, because of product buildup. Again, like this is very surface level situation we're talking, but if we really have to make sure our hair, first of all, grows in
Yeah.
the most healthy way, you definitely have to dig deep. You have to go internal. You have to get a blood work done to see what exactly is going wrong,
Mhm.
right? Like, is it the B12? Is it the testosterone? Is it the DHT? Is
Mhm.
it the thyroid, which is out of whack? So, anytime and every time people come to me for getting their hair right, the first thing is to go inside to get a blood work done. There is just like no excuse of
What
that.
are some of the most important biomarkers that someone should keep on their top of their head? Maybe someone who's listening to this podcast has recently done a blood analysis, but they do not know what to look at. What are some of the most key things that you would look at?
So as I said, B12, because I think there's a trend now. Everyone wants to be vegan,
Mhm.
and we do not get enough B12 from plant-based sources. That's why having indication as to where you are in terms of your B12 level, where you are in terms of your ferritin, where you are in terms of your thyroid with antibodies, very important. A lot of people forget to get that test done, and of course DHT and
Mhm.
cortisol and insulin. So actually, it's
Okay.
like
So
and.
there is insulin, and if you guys are driving, please don't take notes. Play this podcast again. But if you're sitting in your house and you have your iPhones or notepads, then note this down. You've got testosterone, DHT, B12. You've got
Iron,
iron, so ferritin, things like that. You've got what else did you say?
cortisol,
Cortisol, insulin.
AM and PM, because
Okay.
when we wake up with a slightly higher cortisol, as we know, it's like
Mm.
the
Yeah.
circadian rhythm. We want to get things done, so obviously it will be a little higher. But during the night, your cortisol should be at its minimum because you want to let your body heal and rejuvenate and restore
Yeah.
everything that you've gone through. So all these parameters are extremely important when you really are looking at improving your hair health,
Okay.
and only then you would be able to take an informed action and get the supplements right. And also, when you're getting the blood work done, it's very important to make sure that everything is in an optimal reference range and not
Okay.
normal. We
Yeah.
don't want normal.
Yeah.
Yeah, we don't
Normal
want to
is
survive. We want to thrive.
normal is just below average. So for people who are listening, and this is thank you for bringing this up
Yeah.
because most of the times I have people who are telling me I'm just in the normal range and I have this and I've done
Yeah.
this test and I have B12 and I have my insulin is normal. But what really happens, guys, is that nutrition science and all of these information that is being accepted over the globe is probably about 80 years old at least, and the optimal range, the average um, range results from anyone who's probably 16 to anyone who's 82, and then they have an average out of that. So your average could be like in real life scenario could be an 80-year-old scanning of someone who was 60 or 70. So you don't want to be average. Average is not what biohackers want to be. You want to be above average, you want to be optimal, and you want to be fully functional to be taking on any challenges in life. And just and also not even about challenges, just to relax, because every time you're like not in the optimal zone or you're like below average, I call it below average, your resiliency to any sort of stress or activation of this sympathetic nervous system and like trying to be in this rest and digest mode just disappears. You get more cranky, your hormones go down, your thyroid receptors take a big plunge. You don't want to be doing that. So Manisha, I'm super happy that we sort of like went into this. We spoke about this external thing, and then we sort of transition into the internal part. Is there anything else when it comes to emotions or
Oh,
something else
definitely.
which we can put into
Yes.
the internal category?
So there are two things that happen when clients come to me. Either they've had some really emotional stuff in the past that they've not been able to process. So I'm also a sound healer,
Yeah,
just for our viewers. So I
Manisha
understand.
does everything, guys.
So they come either with an emotional baggage which is not processed, which is just holding, and the second is either they've gone on a super crazy crash diet.
Yeah.
More than often it's the latter, but when it's combined, again it's just like disaster.
Yeah.
Yeah. So these two things, and that's why I talk about emotional health also so much. I talk about positive affirmation because anything and everything that we are on our exterior is just a reflection of how we feel and how we are on the inside. So our aura, our just our normal well-being and how we look, because looking good is a very surface level thing. It's if you don't feel good, there's no way you're gonna look good.
Mhm.
So it all starts from within. That's why 80% of my consultations or even of this podcast is revolving around the internal health. It's about these biomarkers which we can control, right? Because we are blessed with this machine. Yes, it's a vessel that we all are living in. So why not give it the best?
Yeah.
When we have the amenities, when we have the knowledge and we have the resource, why not fortify it with everything that it needs, deserves to function at its optimal best?
So how does someone who's listening to this, maybe they have, someone's lost a job or they have like a breakup with their girlfriend or they are sort of like in this pandemic and their business isn't doing good. So they have some sort of like an emotional stress. What are
Correct.
your stress management strategies, like a general stress management strategies, or how do people sort of get rid of those emotional baggages that are actually putting them under the water rather than like being above the water?
So that's a very different topic, but I would love to address that because sometimes when people come to me, they have no external problem that they are doing, but it's just internal. And I always say this: there's this beautiful thing that we all have, this anchor that we all can come back to is our breath,
Mm.
just breathing, and and not just like doing like 10-15 minutes of breath work when you wake up or before you go to bed, but throughout the day, being conscious of that breath that you're inhaling and like not just a shallow breath, like breath that enables you to fill your diaphragm, your lungs, your stomach, and have that full breathing throughout the day, consciously, mindfully, because that brings us to the awareness of now. And when we kind of honor the now and the present, uh, it kind of puts us out of our analytical mind. Kind of like lets our let we kind of like forget about it. I wouldn't
Yes.
say forget, but we put that in the backside of our subconscious and just honor this now and the present that we are in.
So you're
So
not dancing in this past, like problems in the past and worries about the
yeah, and the
future.
future, it's something that the more I practice this in my life, I feel I become like water. I flow, and not just that I flow, things start flowing to me, and that's the whole principle of living optimum fulfilled life.
Mhm.
Yeah, no resistance, just flow and breathe because we have this is a tool that we all are blessed with. Why not make the most of it?
What's your favorite breathing technique? Like, is there a certain way that you breathe, or there are some numbers you manipulate with,
I do the
or
box breathing.
okay,
I
so
breathe in for four, hold for four, exhale for four, and this is the breathing technique I also put my clients through when they come for sun healing. And For me, this has a very tangible, profound impact on my well-being. It can be different for different people.
mm,
Even like alternate nostril breathing is something that I practice when I wake up.
mm,
So each one to their own, but just the fact that we all are blessed with this,
mm.
just make the most of it.
I completely agree that breath is one of the most powerful tools, and also it's free. Um,
It's free,
yeah,
exactly.
you don't have to do all these crazy biohacking stuff to get it,
Yeah,
but just it sort of is so powerful to bring you in the present. And also, there is thank you for mentioning that a lot of people would listening to this would be like, yeah, I am breathing all the time, but are you breathing right? Because on our chest, we have something called as the baroreceptors, and every time you take take a normal breath in, you're having sort of this shallow breath that activates those baroreceptors. And one of the critical functions of the baroreceptors is to increase cortisol. So every time you're just breathing fast, and you're not taking the time to breathe properly, and you're not engaging your diaphragm, you're engaging your baroreceptors, and that's going to increase more stress hormones, more cortisol. You won't be able to sleep at night. You will be angry. You'll be frustrated. So why do that? Just take a deep breath inside and sort of control your breathing, because one of the other misconceptions a lot of people have had in the past is that they've always said, "Oh, you need to breathe more, and you need to breathe more so you get more oxygen." But the reality is, and this has been made very clear from the beginning of time, from the ancient yogis to the Tai Chi grandmasters to the Shaolin monks, and even in yoga, they say that your life is every breath is like a life, and
it's life force, right?
every time you take a lot of breath, you sort of like take a lot of that life force out. So, and when you look at the scientific community, we also understand that every time, so your red blood cells are the ones that are carrying oxygen, right? They're transporting hemoglobin, they're transporting all this oxygen around. And when you look at sick, worried, or diseased people, most of the times they're breathing like shallow and they're breathing fast. So their breath rate could go anywhere between 21 to 30 times per minute. And
Wow.
yes, and what happens is we don't, so oxygen is being transported through the blood vessels, and what you really need for that oxygen to be dumped into your organs or other cells is
Or your
actually
hair
carbon,
follicles.
or your hair follicles. It's carbon dioxide. And so this is why I always tell people, like, when you're like, let's say when you were doing box breathing, you were
Yeah.
building up a lot of carbon dioxide when you're holding, and that buildup of carbon dioxide disassociates oxygen from the hemoglobin to be dumped by the red blood cells all over the body. So it's difficult. It's difficult when you start, but let's say if you were just breathing like, you take a deep breath in, but release it slowly, and that back pressure will allow for more oxygen to be kind of dumped. So breathing is very interesting, and I think it's been used for millennia now.
Exactly.
It's been, all the ancient tribes have spoken about some kind of breathing. But if you're listening to this podcast, just breathe well, and breathe slowly. And every time you breathe slowly, you will be aware of the moment. So thank you for sharing that. Apart from breathing, anything else? Any supplements that we can use to sort of release our stress?
Of course.
What would
It's
what would
very
be your
critical.
top?
As I said, like the soil is so deficient. Our day to day food is not even come close to in fulfilling that. So I have like a very cute mnemonic for it. So instead of ABC, it's
Yeah.
IBC
Okay.
Z. So I stands for iron, because
Yeah.
as we were just talking about how critical it is for our blood
Yeah.
to be able to carry
Yeah.
hemoglobin to various organs. Iron by far is the number one mineral that I see uh, with most women at a
Yeah.
very way below
Yeah.
the normal reference range. And your ferritin has to be not like 20, it has to be 80 for your
80. Okay.
for your hair to be in its thriving
Yep.
state. B12 is B,
Yeah.
and your complex ain't cutting it. You have to take a B12 supplement.
Okay.
I talk about it a lot on my
Sweet.
Instagram. It's actually a vegan B12 spray, uh, and you can just spray like two sprays under
So it's
your tongue.
sublingual. Okay.
Yeah, sublingual because the absorption rate is
I,
way higher. That is one. And your B12 has to be not 200, 300, it has to be 500 at least.
wow, that's above. That's
Most
way
of us,
above most
yeah,
of.
most of us have 200 to 300. And we think, look, yeah, it's normal, but no, we don't know normal, as we
Mhm.
said. Then the third thing is a little controversial. It's collagen.
Okay.
Not a lot of people want to go that way because of, and I understand the religion,
Yeah.
ethical reasons, but it is by
And the
far
vegan collagen doesn't work as much.
and there's nothing called as vegan collagen.
Yeah.
It should be called something else. It's not
Yeah.
vegan collagen. Uh, the collagen kind of as we age about 35, 40, it our body cannot produce enough collagen. We have the ability, but we need to supplement it with collagen. And bovine type 1 and type 3 is the one that is highly researched and has a very profound impact. Like your body can emulate and it understands this type. Uh,
I agree because there are 28 different types of collagen, and like
yeah,
most of the research has been on those numbers, like type 1 and type 3.
exactly.
Some research is coming up on type 6. And yeah, but collagen, yeah, in my opinion, as well, is one of the most underrated supplements on this planet because you just don't. You need it for hair health, you need it for skin elasticity. It's
Exactly.
just so
Anti-aging.
multifunctional. It's anti-aging, yeah, because
Yeah.
the glycine in collagen can. I mean, one of the other reasons why a lot of people would sort of like go on a low protein diet in anti-aging because they think that protein increases this. Um, well, protein for everyone who's listening is like a group of amino acids stacked in a perfect order, and the first one in the rank is called an amino acid called methionine. And there's been a lot of theories saying that excess methionine in the body can sort of increase this cellular growth complex called mTOR.
Mm.
And when mTOR increases, it reduces, I mean, it starts aging you faster. But there is a hack around it. The hack is in order to suppress methionine, which you will have from, which is good because it's got a metal part, it's from all this methionine rich food like meat and stuff like that. If you counteract that with glycine, it can suppress methionine. And one of the things that has glycine is collagen. So the more collagen you eat, you can suppress methionine and sort of like reduce that mTOR complex. And yeah, that's a good way to
Interesting.
yeah that's a
Wow.
good way to anti-age.
And the last one is zinc,
Zinc.
because zinc iron are kind of interrelated. So we need to make sure that we are supplementing enough with zinc, around 30 to 50 mg of both. And if you are if you have issues with constipation, I would say a liquid
What about
iron.
copper? Because most of the times what happens is
The iron, zinc, copper, they're all
yeah,
yeah.
the more you increase your iron or zinc, copper drops, and then you have a multitude of other problems that comes
Correct.
with the copper deficiency. So you
These are my top
yeah.
recommendations because most of the clients that I've had in the last 2 years that I've been doing this full time,
Yeah.
I have noticed a significant reduction in these minerals
Mhm.
and hormones. If you are above 55, your DHT as a woman,
Yeah.
it cannot be above 128, and if you are below 55, it should not be above 300. So these parameters are important in understanding the reason why you're having hair fall.
Yeah.
So once we have these parameters in place, when I know there's an emotional baggage or like a diet issue, addressing these problems just becomes easier. Not just for me, for even you. If you're listening to it, go ahead and
Yeah, try to biohack it yourself.
yeah, biohack it yourself. And this is what I do. I love to empower people with information. That's why I have my online course, which I use in my consultations because I don't want them to come to me every time like Manisha this. No, knowledge is key, yes, but application of that knowledge in our daily lives is what enables us to conquer it all.
I completely agree. That's why
Yeah.
when I started Shift with CJ, one of my top priorities, and I have this thing everywhere, was do the three E's: educate,
I love
elevate,
that.
and empower people.
I love it.
And I'm so happy, and thank you so much for educating,
Yeah.
elevating, and empowering people to do everything that you've been doing. So we've addressed the
Causes.
we've addressed what hair follicles are, what the causes, why those three big parameters. And now and we've sort of like given people solutions on the way itself. Now I would like to jump into what are like, okay, tell us about firstly about your product,
Yeah.
because that seems to be one of the biggest biohacks. And then after that, we can just sort of like go over some of the new advancements, or you could talk even you could I would like to get your take on some of the myths that are going around in the hair industry, because you are obviously much more familiar than all of these things. Like a client might come and tell you, oh,
Yeah.
I've heard that this a plus b equals c, but you might think that, oh no, science says a plus b is not c. There's no a and there's no b.
Yeah. So as I said, like vascularity is super
Mhm.
important, and Mitra, the scalp oil that I have curated, is primarily for people to incorporate this practice in their lives as a daily basis, like on a
Mhm.
daily basis. Like how we go to the gym to like keep our muscles
Yeah.
toned, you have to keep your scalp health nourished,
Mhm.
fortified, at least twice a week. Like
Yeah.
do it, like go out of your way and like give it that massage, give it that love, and enable it to do what it can do naturally, having all the nourishment with the vascularity, with blood supply, and of course the Ayurvedic herbs and seeds has the ability to kind of like go systemically
Mhm.
and affect your hair follicles in a much more deeper level. Uh,
So this Ayurvedic formula, that is it a proprietary formula, or you can share with us what's inside?
well, yeah, it's something that I curated during lockdown,
Okay.
and
So what are the main things that power this Ayurvedic formula?
uh, the base oil is obviously these are high molecular oils, which is coconut, rosemary, avocado. These have a higher molecular structure, so they kind of like act as a really good base for me to brew Ayurvedic herbs and seeds
Mhm.
like ashwagandha, rita, bringraj,
Mhm.
fenugreek powder,
Mhm.
black seed,
Yeah.
onion powder. It's
So
just
very
like yeah.
typical ones that have been used in Ayurveda
Yeah,
for like thousands of years.
it's 15 ingredients
Okay, 15.
in total,
Interesting.
which I brew in a double boiling method
Mhm.
so that the oil does not become rancid. It
Mhm.
preserves its molecular structure, yet has these herbs and seeds giving out its actual potential benefits.
And you
Uh,
enhance it with sound therapy, because you have mantras going on and
yes,
frequencies of vibrations
completely.
coming in.
Yes, it's completely handcrafted, and I do believe consistency is the key for everything in life. So massaging your scalp, and I'm not just saying with mantra, like whatever it is that resonates the most with you. If you know who has made it and where you're sourcing your products from, like just be consistent with it till you see the results, and then it just becomes like a maintenance protocol.
Okay.
Yeah, and I don't say just like standalone. This is gonna help. You can just use your fingertips to massage your scalp on a daily basis. If you know if you think the product is expensive and if you think you don't want to buy
Yeah.
or anything for
So
that
how long do
matter.
I have to massage this product on my head? Like, let's say if after hearing this conversation, I had to give this a try, and someone who's listening might be like, oh, you know what? These guys have come up with really good information, and I think I can trust them. If someone buys your product, what's the minimum effective dose? Because again, everyone's busy, everyone's
Yeah.
going to the office, there are 10,000 things, and the last thing you want to do is to like walk around with an Ayurvedic hair oil
Of course,
everywhere.
no, no.
So,
Any oil, first of all, as I said, hair is dead. We do not need a hair oil.
mhm,
That's why my product is called a scalp oil. It's
okay.
only meant to be applied on your scalp. Make sure it is used in a few drops around all
Mhm.
over your scalp, and that particular product is then massaged inside.
Okay.
Yeah, so and I say any product that you're applying on your hair for stimulating the hair follicles should not be on your scalp for more than 2 to 3 hours.
Okay. 2 to 3 hours. Can you apply this in the night and
Yes,
then?
you can just like have it overnight as well because
Okay.
at that point you're having a localized exposure.
Yeah.
You're not like moving around where there's no contact of oil with the environment. So that kind of also is a good way to use the product.
Okay. Perfect. So, how much does this product cost for people who are listening?
Right now, it's at a very very affordable price.
Interesting.
I've just got the license and everything in place. It's
Okay.
soon gonna go online,
Oh wow.
so I think I'm gonna keep the prices secret for now.
Okay, so we'll check Manisha's page, KHDH, to find out what she's been doing. You also have a website,
Yes.
and it talks about all of these things. And you're also into sound therapy. So talk to us about what is soul Swana. Did I get that right?
Yeah, you got that
Okay.
right now. So Swana is the Sanskrit term for sound,
Mhm.
and soul we all have one. So it's the sound of your soul, because I do believe like our gut, our soul is always communicating to us, and just honoring that and being in that awareness of what it is trying to communicate to us is the key to everything. Like I think for the longest time, my soul was telling me, you know what, just get into the hair industry. It's a very underserved
Yeah.
market, and I think you know enough.
Yeah.
If only I had heard the sound of my soul
Yeah.
5 6 years ago.
Yeah. But I think everything happens at
Everything
the
has a
correct time.
journey.
Yeah. So you
Yes.
had to go through all of that to serve this market even better.
Yes.
So what
So,
do you do with Soul Swana? Like someone who's listening, they're interested about this name.
so
What
we
is tell us more.
Yeah, so we moderate sound bath meditations. It starts with guiding people through a small meditation, just so that we can allow their minds to calm down, slow
Yeah.
down, silent down. And then we expose them to healing frequencies and vibrations with the written balls and with crystal balls, because these frequencies kind of attune to your every organ's frequency. It's not, no one knows what's the exact frequency of a particular organ.
I do.
Yeah.
Really.
Really? Okay.
And in fact, I did not keep a special. I mean, just just over here, people who are listening, you guys can't see, and the people who are seeing, they can't see because it's right behind the camera. There is a big box that was kept, and I've just kept it into the other room. And this box has a machine, and it's called Best Bioenergy Stimulation by
Okay.
JC.
Wow.
So this is done by one of our friends. In He's from Belgium, and he is this physiotherapist doctor who's traveled the world for more than 40 years, and he's learned from ancient Ayurveda. He's learned from traditional Chinese medicine. He's treated world class athletes, and basically what this he's able to do is he's after 40 years figured out what frequency every organ has, and he has, well, the machine is quite big, and it has different electrodes, and it uses microcurrent therapy to talk to every organ, whichever is, like let's say your kidneys aren't working well, or your heart isn't working well, or your brain isn't working well. So they have like manual electrodes and these different electrodes that go into different very specific parts, and I can show that to you later. And they sort of, I don't know this, but they sort of figured out everything, and now you can easily go into their program.
Yes.
And it's a class 2 medical device. It's or a class 1 medical device. It's mostly be used in clinics and anti-aging facilities.
Not at home. Not
You
at
can.
home. You
It's
can.
it's about it's we're looking at 70,000 dirhams.
Okay, that's
That's
quite
the
an
price.
investment. That's why you come for sound healing with also.
Yeah. So and that's where they probably got it from. They
Yeah.
probably went to different ancient monasteries, and Jack was here on the podcast, and we've been keeping in touch. We're going to be I'm going to be a part of his team in the Arab Health that's coming up, and we're going to teach people that how like these frequencies from Tibetan bowls or some other mantras or chanting,
Yeah.
how do you catch that? And then how do you use it with science to sort of like transmit it to the body? So yeah, to answer your question, I don't really know how the exact frequencies, but I have a machine which I can exactly type in like kidney or like heart
Amazing.
or pancreas or something else,
Yeah.
and really talk to that. But yeah, Jack is the person who knows all of this.
But that's how even like ultrasound was invented to cure cancer, because they kind of figured out, okay, this is the frequency at which we can heal the cancer cells without affecting the adjacent tissues and organs. So well, yeah, it's science is catching up, which is beautiful. And the fact that these alternative healing modalities have been in practice for years, like, it's just that it's coming to surface now. It's like medicine's best kept secret,
Yeah.
which is now which is out there now for more and more people to consume, and that's why we at Souls One want to incorporate not just sound healing as a modality for people to experience, but also incorporate other healing modalities with it, so that whenever people come in, they actually walk out of it feeling refreshed, and it's an experience in itself. And again, it's just to empower people to know that just going to a doctor and pop a pill is not the only solution. Being from a dental background, being a dentist myself, was never a fan of conventional medicine. Nothing against it, But I do believe these healing modalities have more power in
Yeah,
terms of really addressing the root cause. And if you are able to do that,
that's it.
that's
Okay, I
then
think
you just empowered, right? And that's
it
the whole point of being. Be
true.
empowered being and be your own doctor.
Yeah, be your own doctor. I mean, not the kind of doctor you get from Dr. Google, but like, yeah, because most of the people are now becoming doctors because of Dr. Google. And if you're listening to this show and you're watching this show, and if you want to hear more about sound healing and what frequencies can do, then drop me a text. Maybe we'll have Manisha again for round two, but this time we'll be talking about sound healing and soul smile.
Amazing. Yeah, interesting. We,
Yeah,
we will do that.
we could
Yeah.
do a part two of this. Well, just let us know what you guys think, and we will answer, and we will be there to serve you. Now, let's talk about some of the like. Now we're at the end of the podcast. Let's try to sum
Get
it
back
up.
to hair.
Yeah, let's try to sum it up and sort of like talk about some of the latest things that are happening. Some of the things that you have probably seen that wasn't really accepted like 5 years ago or 10 years ago. What is the nuances, or what is your are there some things in research right now that have been
Well, I think hair transplant is something that
Mhm.
everyone is aware of.
Yeah,
But again, it's a very invasive and it's a
yeah,
surgical procedure, extremely painful. But to my research of why I keep reading on journals and stuff, there's something that's happening out of California where plant-based pigments can be kind of like transdermally introduced
Mhm.
through your scalp so that it mimics your hair follicles.
Interesting.
Yeah, and
So
can
these are not
actually.
peptides.
I am not sure if they're peptides, but I think it's plant based, so
Okay.
no chemical
Yeah.
here. So yeah, I know about peptides having a very profound impact
Mhm.
on your hair growth. But again, that's chemical for me
Yeah.
because I deal more with holistic
Yeah.
product which holds to use the innate ability of our
Mhm.
body to do what it can do best. So my research revolves more around more of natural stuff. So this is something which I am keeping my eye out where it is non-surgical. It's just like kind of injected. It's
Yeah.
something like PRP, but in PRP
Yeah.
we use our own platelets.
Yeah.
Again, I think PRP has done quite a bit of like I would say like a revolution
Mhm.
of sorts where people don't want to go the surgical route
Yeah.
in terms of growing hair because it uses your own platelets to
Mhm.
activate the hair follicles and give you new hair growth. But after platelet PRP treatment, this is something I'm keeping my eye out for because it actually mimics your hair follicles in a way that it produces hair not just in a natural way but it's permanent.
Mhm. So the people who are listening to this and who don't have a health background would just be like, "What did she just say?
Yeah.
Platelets." So let me just explain it to you guys. What Manisha is talking about is called PRP, platelet-rich plasma, where basically a certain part of your, I mean, from your arm, you go into a lab, they'll take some blood out of your arm, they'll put it in the centrifuge, and they'll spin it at abnormally high speeds, and
Yeah.
they'll remove certain components of it, and then they will put it back in your body, and that sort of like increases. That is what we were talking about.
It kind of like is like inducing some sort of trauma so your
Mhm.
body's own healing mechanism can induce more blood flow to that. Basically vascularity
Yeah.
is the key here. It's gonna.
So we're looking at something. What about derma rolling then? Have you
I
ever
have not
seen any
tried.
data on
I
derma
have
rolling?
not tried derma rolling, but a lot of influencers talk about it.
Mhm.
Again, it's very anecdotal. It's
Yeah.
based on their personal experience. But I would say any procedure that involves a little bit of an invasion,
Yeah.
you should always do it out of a professional clinic
Mhm.
and always do it under someone's supervision because it can cause some sort of cross
Okay.
infection if you've not sanitized
Yeah.
your derma roller as well.
So I cannot use my derma roller on my head.
Well, I wouldn't really recommend it, but because you have the awareness and the information, I
Yeah.
think you would take care of every step
Okay.
that is involved. But for all those who are listening, please do it under professional
Yeah,
supervision.
we're not. This is just a biohacker's opinion. And one of the things that came to my mind when you were talking about this plant is like we all know that plant phenols and polyphenols and flavonoids and all of these things have a certain,
Antioxidants.
yeah, they're so powerful in their antioxidant capacity. And also one of the things that has caught my attention recently was this extract of a plant called GG. It's called Gerunoil.
Okay.
and basically it's being tested now, and it has the ability to scavenge a lot of free radicals, increase a lot of ATP production, and yeah, you could. It's not a topical. You Most of the people are using it to increase their hormonal health and a lot of.
This is not specific to hair,
Uh,
or
no,
it
it's
can
not, but
impact
it
your.
could if you can release like the molecules or the
Yeah.
daltons in the GG itself,
Okay.
and if someone can find like a topical application, I would completely agree, because
Yeah.
the person who's come up with this is a Malaysian scientist and he lives in the US, and they have previously been looking at all of these tocopherols and tocotrienols for all of these anti-aging things, and now according to him he thinks that GG is one step above everything else. So maybe in the future we'll see something with GG or some other plant pigmentation
Saw
that comes in.
palmetto is one that is also like it comes in a capsule or a
Okay.
tablet form where it's a natural
What is
DHT
it called?
blocker. Saw palmetto.
Okay, so
It's
palmetto.
a
Yeah,
it's
yes,
a
I've
it's a
heard of it.
natural DHT blocker. For me, as we just spoke, I'm not a big fan of blocking DHT completely systemically. So for me, I'm looking actually out for something which is gonna block the DHT blocker topically.
Yeah.
So just because if it's about hair, I would like to have like a localized implication of
Mhm.
any supplement that I'm prescribing. Like I don't really go out and tell people, okay, use Minoxidil or use
Yeah.
finasteride, unless and until it's come through like somebody like a trichologist has
Yeah.
prescribed it. I don't take the authority yet, but I know how these chemicals work.
Yeah,
Like even
agree.
like if someone comes to me and says, okay, what are the three main things that you would tell me to never have any hair issue? I would firstly say have a regular scalp oil massage.
Mhm.
Uh,
Which I will have after this podcast because I haven't had it in a while.
have a low inflammatory lifestyle, have
Uh,
as low
yeah,
inflammatory food.
yeah.
Number two and number three, which I think a lot of people are diving into, is have you heard of low level light therapy? I'm
Low
sure,
level light
but
therapy.
not LED, but low level, like turbo
Well,
laser caps.
there is a very big light panel right next to you,
Yes, I see
and there
that.
is a whole big light panel over there. So, and there are some light mats in the other room. So I'm sort of aware about this
Yeah, so these
light
yeah,
therapies.
light therapies, and I know you know the science. It kind of like alters the Krebs cycle
Yes. Yeah.
mechanism that's happening. I read
So
this back in biochemistry, but now I understand the
let me
relatability.
let me let me
Yeah,
think
go
and try
ahead.
to explain to the listeners. So basically, what happens is every time you had red and near infrared light, so red light anywhere between 600 to 650 nanometers, and infrared light, which is invisible light, which we also get from the sun, and around 830 to 850 nanometers. Every time these lights, they have this unique ability to penetrate deep down your skin, and not just at the surface level, they can penetrate into your bones, into the skull, into the brain tissue, into the heart. And what it does primarily, or why red light therapy has become so famous, is because it sort of rearranges the water in your cells, so it makes them more exclusion zone water, which Dr. Gerard Pollack from the University of Washington has been researching. And basically, we've thought that water comes in three forms, but no, there's another form of water which are present in plants, which sort of is like this gel-like structure. It's not ice, it's not gas, it's not liquid, it's gel. And every time you increase this gel-like water in your body, you sort of like increase a lot of this energy production. And normally, naturally, when the water is flowing through rivers and streams, one of the ways to make it gel-like is when sunlight hits it, and they have some sort of a grounding effect. So you can sort of like mimic this in your body by letting your body absorb this natural red and near infrared light. And also, it acts on the mitochondria, which is this energy supplies of our body. And in hair growth or like preventing hair loss, I think red light therapy allows for the dissociation of nitric oxide from this mitochondrial complex called cytochrome C oxidase. So it's the fourth complex in the respiratory chain in the mitochondria. And when that happens, you produce a lot of energy, and
Yes.
that energy can be used for just your hair health or your mental health or your physical health. It's just energy, so you can sort of like use that energy. And there is an enzyme, there is a molecule called ATP, and ATP is your cellular energy that increases. You reduce free radicals, you increase cell migration, cell proliferation, and stem cells and so many other things. So I think red light acts on
Yes.
those mechanisms, and I honestly feel that red light not just for hair but
But
for
yeah,
everything
everything, because it's a
is
cellular regeneration that's happening from within.
yeah.
So yeah, that's a beautiful insight. Thank you for explaining the Krebs cycle so beautifully.
Thank you.
As a dental student, I never understood Krebs
Yeah,
cycle
Krebs cycle
myself.
is a bit complex.
It is.
I'm just a fan of the mitochondria,
I
and
love
yeah,
mitochondria
and now
as
I'm
well.
just moving more. I was in the mitochondrial camp for many years. Now I'm looking more into the peroxisomes and their
Oh wow,
things. So
interesting. You're a
yeah.
true biohacker.
Okay, so what else?
Amazing.
We've got red light therapy. What else?
Scalp oil
Scalp oil
massage, low
massage,
inflammatory diet. These are the top
mhm,
three recommendations if you really want to have.
PRPs.
PRPs, again, that's like a preventative
Yeah,
protocol. Right now, I'm talking about things that you can do on a daily basis
yeah.
just for your hair health, just for
Have you heard about C60 or carbon
360
60?
molecule. Yeah, it's it's doing quite a round in the hair growth industry, hair restoration industry. If I may add.
And
Yes.
what are your views on that?
Since I have not personally used it, I have only read about it, and
Yeah,
it does have incredible results.
yeah,
I have seen it.
yeah.
Again, I've just read through it. I
Mm.
have come across people who used it on social media, but again, no personal experience, so to speak. And I would not incorporate any chemical as yet in
Mhm.
any of my
Mhm.
formulations because right now I'm creating a beard oil and a hair mist with
Interesting.
sunscreen, which
Oh wow,
is 100% natural. So
amazing.
C60 wouldn't be anywhere close to my realm of interest as of
Yeah,
now because I do everything scratch like by
yeah,
myself.
yeah.
Unless and
C60.
until my team expands and goes into this whole revolution of science and biohacking with products, maybe then. But
Yeah,
for now, it's one product at a time.
interesting. C60 is interesting because about 4 years ago, when I first learned about, yeah, I think it was 4 years ago, I first learned about C60. C60 was the only molecule, and for anyone who's listening, it's like this carbon atoms. There are 60 spear face shaped carbon atoms that are joined together, and it's like super black in color. Normally, it's with a carrier oil. It could be with coconut oil or mostly with an olive oil, and
Also,
it's
grapeseed oil.
yeah, grapeseed oil. The promises is one of the most anti-aging compounds because again it acts as a major antioxidant and it reduces free radicals. And in my studies, the only molecule that has been able to extend lifespan by 90% or 95% is C60. And just because it could reduce free radicals, you could apply it topically. So 4 years ago, when this was all in
Have you tried it?
research,
Have you?
yeah, I have a bottle down in the freezer, in my fridge, and for some reason I did not because it was so expensive to get it. It was C60 at that time was super expensive, and in my bottle it even says like research purposes only, not say for human consumption. So I had to get it out of a lab to experiment with it. At that time, I had like amazing health, so I've
Yeah.
stored it and kept it for times that I'm super sick. And when I'm super sick, I really use it,
And
and it helps. But I never use it on a constant basis because I feel like all the other things that I'm doing is already
good enough.
good enough, and just adding like $150 to $200 on a monthly budget just for carbon 60 is
Is that how much the bottle costs or one
uh,
caps?
it's like how much the bottle costs. But I'm sure this was 4 years ago, so now there must be
Yeah.
more companies are sort of like taking
Yeah.
advantage. And also, like one of the things that I always tell people is, well, we spoke about the mitochondria and the red light therapy, but honestly, I don't want to give people an impression that biohacking is super expensive and it's
Exactly.
crazy
Yeah.
because you could invest in a 5,000 dirham light panel, or you could just do some fasting because we know that fasting via this ancient method of recycling your cells called
Yeah.
autophagy can also increase mitochondrial health, mitochondrial performance. And if you wake up early, I'm not a fan of waking up super early in the morning, but either early morning when it's sunrise or late evenings when there's sunset, if you go outside and if you're sort of sun gazing, you're allowing for the same exact red and near infrared light naturally coming from the sun to penetrate into your cells and to cause the same action. Of course, it's not going to be as powerful as a red light panel, but that's a cheaper fix for anyone who And there have been anecdotal evidence of like just sun gazing by itself increases so much of energy. I would argue it's because of that infrared and red light acting on the mitochondria itself.
Yeah, because our eyes also have photoreceptors, not
Exactly.
just the skin, and that kind of
Even our,
activates
yeah,
it. Yeah.
everything has
Yeah.
photoreceptors. So perfect. We've talked so much, and I
I
and I haven't
know.
even seen the time like I normally do. So it has been so interesting to have you here. Thank you so much for all the work that you've done, all the knowledge that you've spread, all the products that you've created, and I'm waiting to see like the next product that is coming. I say all the products because I know there is some in the line already.
Yes.
But my last question to you is, if you had a time machine and if you could go back in time
Yeah.
and if you could tell yourself, your younger self, one thing, whether it be about health, finance, relationships, stress management, something, if you could give your younger self an advice, what would that be?
Well, that's a very interesting question. I didn't think
Mhm.
you would throw something like that at me. But I think where I am at today, and the reason why I have been able to, like, let go of my corporate career, my dentistry, it's just been this one thing that I was always very attached to, and I believed in myself. And I would tell this to my younger self, like, just keep going, believe in yourself, because when we believe in ourselves and we keep constantly telling us positive things, and that's why I talk about internalizing positive
Mhm.
affirmations so much, because our subconscious doesn't know what's happened and what's going to happen.
Mhm.
It only believes with what's in the now, and when you choose to tell yourself the best story, you kind of believe it's already happened.
Mhm.
And
So
just
fake it till
being
you make it.
fake it till you make it, feel it how you would feel when you have believed in yourself and done something,
Mhm.
and just be in that feeling, let your body experience that bliss and keep going.
Mhm.
I would just say
I
that.
I love that, and
Thank
that is
you.
something that anyone who's listening, if you have a younger child, if you have a cousin who's growing up, one of the most important things that you can put into their subconscious mind is to believe in themselves, is to have trust, confidence, faith, hope with whatever is going to work out. The universe is conspiring things in a certain way that everything that is working out for your best experience in your favor, and that is not just limited to kids. You can have this in your own life because that is really what's happening. So there can be challenging times, and life could be like a roller coaster. You don't want to go up, you want to come down so you can go up again. And yeah, let's just start playing, keep playing this game of life and enjoy it. This is me, CJ, signing out from the Ship with CJ podcast with Dr. Manisha. I hope you guys have a great day, a great week, an energetic year, a great lifetime ahead of you. Thank you, Manisha.
Thank you for having me.
It's a pleasure.